Hello everyone, Phoenix Knight here. Welcome to the channel, and welcome to Pinot with Phoenix for January 2025. Yes, I am probably still sounding a little bit under the weather, and no higher ground gaming, I'm not really drinking wine. I don't remember where the Pinot with Phoenix name came from, but it's just it's kind of a catchy name. At least I think it is anyway. But no, I don't really drink wine. And yes, as I mentioned, welcome in Meandering Mike as well, and of course Jester. As you might be able to hear, I'm still a little bit under the weather. It's been a very interesting last week of January, but it was a great month of content on the channel. So now we're going to talk about it, and we're going to jump right in with my 1985 season replay in Season Ticket Baseball. In fact, I just finished up not too long ago with block number 25, I think it was. I know I've got the thumbnail ready to go for the next block already, but let me just see what block I'm on. Okay, so it was block 26 that I just finished up with, as the Montreal Expos just defeated the Houston Astros at home by a final score of 5-2. So let's tab over to Excel and see where the standings currently are. Here we go. I'll zoom in on Excel just a touch so you guys can see, and we'll spend a little bit of time with each division. So just to remind you of how the playoff structure works in this replay, the top three teams from each division are going to make the playoffs, but the teams have to have a winning record except for the division champion, or else the playoffs are going to be modified. Then when we get to the playoffs, and actually this is kind of bothering me a little bit. Let me see if I can move my webcam back over. That's not really helping. In fact, I kind of want to be out of the way of the teams anyway as we look at the standings. Top three teams from each division get in. Division winners don't have to have a winning record. Everybody else does, or the playoffs will be modified. As far as the actual playoffs, the 6th seed will play at the 5 seed in the first wild card game. Then the winner of that will play at the 4 seed in the second wild card game. The winner of that will then go play the 1 seed in the League Division Series. Then 3 will play at 2. It will play against 2 in the other Division Series. So that's how the playoffs are going to work. Looking at the AL East, this might still be a little bit on the small side, so let's bring that in a touch. We see that the Yankees are currently dominating baseball right now with a record of 63-28. And they won once on the board. Board record is the first tiebreaker. But in the East, at least, I don't think the Yankees will have to worry anything about a tiebreaker, because they are 9 games up on the Blue Jays in the East, whereas the Blue Jays right now are at 55-38, which is a very respectable record of their own. Then the Tigers are coming in at 53-37. They're 9.5 back of the Yankees, whereas the Orioles and the Red Sox are still at least somewhat relevant in the playoff conversation. The Brewers are starting to drop off a little bit, where they were relevant earlier, and the Indians are looking very much lost in this replay. Moving to the AL West, aka the dumpster fire division of this replay, the Angels are right now the only team that are over 500. They're at 54-38 and leading the AL West. The Royals are at 500, but at 46-46. But remember, at 500 won't get you into the playoffs. You need to be over 500 to get in. So if the playoffs were to start right now, there would be no wild card game in the American League. You call shenanigans on the AL East. Sorry, Higher Ground Gaming, but the Red Sox, while being somewhat good, aren't going to be good enough to get into the playoffs. The only thing I would call shenanigans on, potentially, is the fact that we're looking at having at least 2 teams in the AL East sitting out the playoffs because the AL West was that much trash. Because almost every team in the AL East is better, at least the ones that are relevant in the playoff conversation for the AL East. Almost every playoff team is better than every other team in the AL West. But anyway, that's it for the American League. The Yankees right now would be the 1 seed. Moving to the NL East, we see that the Cardinals are at the top of the National League right now with a record of 57-32. The Expos are 4.5 games back of them, and the Cubs right now would be in the playoffs. They're over 500 with a 46-45 record. The Expos are at 54-38. They're still very much nipping at the Cardinals' heels, And there's a lot of baseball to be played because we are only in the middle of July right now. As for the NL West, the Astros just overtook the Dodgers in the NL West for that crown. The Astros are at 55-37. The Dodgers are at 53-36. The Reds would be in the playoffs as well with a record of 49-41. The Padres are at 500. The Padres are at 500, but again, at 500 won't get you there. And then the Giants and the Braves seem to be fighting for the basement in the AL and the NL West. And what I was noticing, and what's kind of surprising me, is that the Athletics and the Pirates were the last two teams standing in 1991, and they're basically just complete trash in this replay. The Pirates have the worst record in baseball, I think. Yes, they are at 28-62 with a .311 winning percentage, 29.5 games back. I have a feeling the Pirates are going to be the first team to be eliminated. And yeah, the Athletics aren't much better. The Indians will probably be eliminated before the Athletics in the American League, but I don't expect the Athletics to be that far behind. Higher Ground Gaming calls shenanigans on the AL East. Jester says the Cardinals are on top like they should be. I could have 5 teams in the East and 1 in the West. I know I could, and that's why I'm that's why I'm looking at the playoff formatting differently rather than doing it based on divisions, which was making it simple. Do it based on actual league records. Because, like I said, I don't like the idea that I'm going to have at least potentially 2 teams in the AL East sitting out the playoffs because the AL West is that much garbage. But I went with the top 3 teams in each division for simplicity's sake, especially as I'm still fairly early in the replay sequence, and it's probably not that hard, again, to go with the best teams in the league. But for this replay, we're going to stick with the top 3 teams from each division. And we're not going to talk about any kind of shenanigans because the dice are telling the stories that they want to tell. So, yeah, we're not going to worry about any kind of shenanigans in any of these divisions. But that's where things currently stand for 1985. So that's the 1985 replay. And, yeah, like I said, Jester, I'm not changing the rules now since we're already so deep into it. It might be for the next replay moving forward, but we'll talk more about that when we get closer to setting that thing up. I don't know if the Red Sox are just necessarily bad. They're not as good as the other teams that are ahead of them. So, yeah, like I said, I don't think it's the Red Sox being bad. It's just everybody else is better than them. You have to remember, though, Jester, the Red Sox are currently 7 games over 500. So they're pretty good. Just everybody ahead of them is better. So I'm kind of rambling on that front. But that's it for 1985. Again, there will be plenty of that coming. Next up, we'll talk about the Winter Campaign and Arkham Horror, the card game. We've been going through the Scarlet Keys campaign. We're already 4 scenarios in. The 4 scenarios that we've played were Riddles and Rain, which was in London. Dancing Mad, which was in Buenos Aires. Or not Buenos Aires, Havana. Dead Heat, which was in Marrakesh. And On Thin Ice, which was in Anchorage. And the Braves, you think as long as the Braves make it, it's going to be all good. The Braves Higher Ground Gaming are not going to make it. They're fighting with the Giants for last place in the NL West. In fact, by 2 percentage points right now, Atlanta is in last place. But we're talking about Arkham Horror, the card game now. So I've really been enjoying how this campaign's been going. We only have 1 trauma apiece, and I think both of them took physical trauma from when they took the whistle in last week's scenario. But we are already heading for the end of that campaign, which is going to be Congress of the Keys. That'll be on Sunday. So if you haven't been following along with the winter campaign, I'll show you guys the map that I've been using. And we'll be talking more about this. We'll be talking more about Scarlet Keys in the new Tuesday shorter stream segment, because this week's Tuesday stream is going to be dedicated to the outro for the winter campaign, and we're not talking about shenanigans in this one, Higher Ground. So looking at so as you can see here, it's actually very much a globetrotting sandbox, where the only scenarios you're guaranteed, and again, we'll talk more about this, are London and Tunguska. You'll have to unlock those via intel reports, but otherwise, you can pretty much travel this any way you want. My game group looked at this one way. I went at it a different way with the campaign. If, say, Jester and I were to get a couple other people together and play this campaign later, we might take a different route with it. That's the thing I really like about this campaign, is there's a lot of replayability with it. I don't remember exactly what we did what my game group did. I think I've still got the log in here. Catch you later, Higher Ground Gaming. Hope your recording goes well. Looks like I've got the notes here. Yes. So we kind of just went all around the world on this one, whereas I was a little bit more focused on the Americas in this campaign, going over to Asia toward the end. But as I mentioned, we're heading for the end of the campaign as we're heading up to Tunguska on Sunday. So that's where we will be at on Sunday. But that's it for Arkham Horror, the card game. Like I said, we'll have more on that in the dedicated Tuesday stream. So now let's move into the rest of our games. First up, we played G.I. Joe, the deck building game by Renegade Game Studios. This one's a deck builder set in the G.I. Joe universe. And this one was a rough game for us. We were trying to combat the forces of Cobra. We ended up not being able to get rid of Baroness because we ended up spawning her a second time. We just couldn't get rid of her, and we got hammered in this one. It's still a great game, and I do enjoy it, but it is definitely a hard one, so do keep that in mind. Next up, we played America Bomber, Evil Queen of the Skies by Compass Games. This one puts you in control of an America Bomber in an alternate timeline of World War II Europe. After the Germans have won the war in Europe, they're going after the United States. The America Bomber is their long-range bomber to go after the United States mainland. I forgot what our target was, but we actually had a pretty good bombing run. I think we were like 30% on target or something like that. And I still really enjoy the game, especially the narrative that's built around that game. So we'll definitely be seeing more of that on the channel. I'm going to take a quick drink here before we continue. Then our next game was a session of Dragon Age tabletop role-playing game by Green Ronin Publishing. This one's a role-playing game set in the Dragon Age universe, similar to like a Dungeons and Dragons, but the system's a little bit different. It's essentially a 3d6 system where a different colored die is what's known as your dragon die. I've been playing this using Mythic Game Master Emulator to interact with the Oracle, using yes or no questions, and the fate chart to determine if the scenes... Basically, the way Mythic works is you set up a scene, then you roll against your chaos factor, which is a 1 to 9, I believe it is, for how chaotic or orderly the scene is, to determine if the scene takes place as you expect. Then you play through the scene, interacting with the fate chart using your yes or no questions. So in this one, Adana finally tracked down her mage trainer. We've been working on that for the last few episodes. And then she overheard some information as she was getting some rest in terms of about a pack of wolves that they might need to go investigate. And I do enjoy the combat system. It's going to take me a little bit of getting used to, even if we got hammered on that one. But that was a short stream that I mostly needed to give us some story direction. So that'll do it for that talking about Fall Classic. They're not Dragon Age. Dragon Age is what we were talking about. Fall Classic Baseball by ASG Games is what we're talking about next. This one's another baseball simulator because I'm in the middle of purging my Inside Pitch collection. I'm working on 2008 right now for season ticket. I've still got 1989, I've got 1996, 1989, 1974, and 1970 yet to print and cut out for season ticket. Then I'll have Inside Pitch completely purged out of my collection. The reason I ended up purging Inside Pitch is because it just ended up being too much for me. I liked the narrative, but the rules just ended up being way too much, and I never could get a hold of it no matter what I tried. But we're not talking about Inside Pitch. We're talking about Fall Classic Baseball here. For Fall Classic, we went to 2011 and had a matchup between the Milwaukee Brewers and the San Diego Padres. The Padres, if I remember correctly, won that game by a final score of like 3-1 or something like that. It was close-ish. I did enjoy the game, and the system seems fairly straightforward. It's basically a D66 system similar to APA, but it's not a matrix system like Inside Pitch is. It's more similar to APA, where you've also got a D20 in there, because there are some results that are going to call for it, but you can also use fast action cards, which I do use because I kind of like the fast action cards with payoff pitch as well. And I really, it's again it's a system I really enjoy. The card quality for Fall Classic is actually a little bit, it's similar to payoff pitch. If anything, maybe it's a little bit flimsier just because the cards are so much bigger. But I do really enjoy the system. It's fairly straightforward, and the fast action cards make it a lot easier. I'm starting to I'm starting to add the 1960s seasons to my collection, and I think I'm going to probably get a couple seasons in Fall Classic when I move that in. So that's it for Fall Classic Baseball. Last game for the month was Cthulhu Wars Duel by Peterson Games. This was game number 1 on my War Room 10 game challenge list this year. And in Cthulhu Wars Duel, it's the forces of evil have basically eradicated humanity, so now they're fighting each other to see which world is going to see which ancient one is going to rule over the doomed world. And I gotta work on making sure Jester doesn't get too big a hit over there. Anyway, for Cthulhu Wars Duel, we took out Great Cthulhu against the Black Goat. In addition, I've got Cthulhu Wars Duel Extinction. That gives me Windwalker, which is Ithaca, and the Dreamer, which is Sithagua. Great Cthulhu ended up winning that game, so the world is going to be submerged as the Dreamer slumbers once again in deeper lay. Cthulhu Wars seems to basically be Cthulhu Risk, where you're building up your units. You've also got your Ancient One as well, and then you're fighting to try to take over territory. The thing I like is there's not just straight kill results. There's also what are called pain results, where you can where depending on the results of battle, your units might be forced to retreat. But that also gives you an element of strategy where you can essentially send your units back in. And then the spell books actually give you a lot of interesting strategy decisions where when you claim a spell book, you're like, okay, which one do I want to use? Which one plays into my strategy? In Cthulhu Wars Duel, you don't need all 6 spellbooks to win the game, whereas in regular Cthulhu Wars, you do need all 6 to win the game. So that's a little bit of food for thought. Cthulhu Wars Duel, in theory, is a quicker Cthulhu Wars. It's not like a 20 to 30 minute game like I thought Cthulhu Wars, like the box says Cthulhu Wars Duel is supposed to be. But it's not an all-day game like Cthulhu Wars can very easily be. So that'll do it for talking about the games on the channel. Mystical Munchies, let's recap Mystical Munchies. So this month in Mystical Munchies, we were cooking out of the Marvel Eat the Universe cookbook. Here are each of the recipes and what I thought of them. First up for the appetizer, we made Loki's Crope Kakor, which was basically like bacon, onions. I forget what else was in there, but it was all wrapped in potatoes, which was really weird to me. Not that I'm saying it was bad, it was just very different. The problem was the Crope Kakor kept coming apart in the boil. The filling wasn't very bad, but it wasn't holding me. It wasn't helping that the potatoes just were not holding together. The lingonberry jam tasted different. Again, not bad, but I wonder how different I might feel if I had this on like plain bread or something. But just food for thought. Then for the side, I was originally going to make the Shang-Chi's salt and pepper squid rings, but some of the ingredients ended up being difficult to get a hold of, so I ended up making the Yancey Street Kugel instead. Which, it actually is a Jewish recipe. I was doing some research on it, and honestly, it was kind of bland, which unfortunately seems like it's going to be par for the course. So I think I'm going to give the Yancey Street Kugel kind of a pass. Then for the entree, we made Phoenix's hot chicken and egg oyakodon. The sauce in this one was very spicy. I even tried to tailor it with using more paprika and less cayenne pepper, but even that came out very spicy. And there was a lot of rice that I ended up using in that recipe. I don't think I would ever eat that much rice, especially if I made that full recipe again. But I really liked how the chicken thighs turned out, and I could definitely see making that again as a legit bachelor recipe. Just like fried chicken and eggs. Yeah, given that I'm basically a confirmed bachelor for life, I could see that as being a dinner I would make if I have a little more time on my hands and I don't mind dealing with oil and pouring that out of a stock pot. Last up, the dessert was the Spider-Man's New York City cheesecake. The gelatin topping was a little bit weird, and I initially thought that cutting the cheesecake with unflavored dental floss was going to be more than slightly ridiculous. But it actually seemed to work pretty well, and the cheesecake itself turned out very well. Not sure how everybody felt about the gelatin topping. They seem to think it was fine, just a little bit weird. Maybe next time I make cheesecake, I'll throw in some more traditional fruit toppings on that. But everybody was very happy with how the cheesecake turned out. So that'll do it for Mystical Munchies. Before I talk a little bit about Ask Me Anything, let me take another quick drink. Okay. So, if you're not familiar with the Ask Me Anything segment, I think everybody here is familiar with Ask Me Anything, though. If you put a question in the comments with an AMA tag, I'll usually answer the question as long as it's not too personal. As long as what I deem to be too personal, just use a little bit of common sense. If you wouldn't want it asked of you, don't ask it of me. And admittedly, whether or not a question makes AMA is up to my final discretion. I've only had to shut down a few AMA questions just because I deemed them to be too personal. This month, I didn't have any AMA questions, so that's it for that segment. I do have a pair of special topics I want to talk about, though. So first up, let's talk about adding more sports season replays to the channel. Now, you may have noticed a poll a while back on the channel about if I should work in more sports season replays on the channel. Let me see if I can find it here. Here we go. I think we're going to have a better time. I think I have a better time if I go to my actual community tab here and pull it up that way, because it's not going to let me see the actual responses. So it looks like the four votes here. It looks like there were 6 votes in the poll. 4 was for working in football and hockey football and hockey replays. 2 were for no, either just baseball or stop altogether. And the one comment I got pertaining to that was just baseball. But I think I am going to start working in more football and hockey season replays, but I'm going to call them sports projects instead, because in addition to working in the football and hockey season replays, I also want to mix in some more boxing tournaments. And then the plan had originally been with baseball, I'm going to do 2 sports projects per year on the channel. The winter season, which will start in January, will be an executive pick project. All that means is I pick the project. And then the summer season, which will probably start in July, I expect, is going to be an audience helps pick project. I'll explain what I mean by audience helps pick when we get to the 1985 World Series. So the other topic I want to talk about is the newest segment on the channel, the dedicated Tuesday night small streams. Part of that came from the cold that I'm still getting over late this month. But the other part of it is coming from seeing how Tuesday night blocks and my workout schedule, from seeing how my Tuesday nights and replay blocks coexist. And spoiler alert, it's not very well. The main problem the two don't exist well is that Wednesday I'm getting up at 3 a.m. for a morning workout because I've changed my work schedule around a bit. Which means, so with that in mind, in order to get a decent night of sleep, I need to be in bed on Tuesday night by 8:30 p.m. Given that a full block with a ticker takes me about an hour and a half to get through, and actually, yeah, about an hour and a half, even for tonight's block, you can probably see that if I'm getting like a 6:30 start on the block, you can probably see how that's going to be a problem moving forward. So that's why I decided to... So between that and getting sick again amid a season replay, whether it's before I start one or while I'm into one, I figured I had to do something about that. So I decided a somewhat rest night would be handy, which is why I decided to make Tuesday that small rest night. So you'll still see streams most Tuesday nights, but those are going to be dedicated to small streams. So think like your deep game unboxings, upgrades and intro and outro videos for Arkham Horror the card game campaigns, or very small games. Think Star Realms small. Again, I want them to be very small. Otherwise, if I don't have anything that I want to do on the channel, Tuesday is just going to be a rest night to catch up on projects. such as getting games ready, potentially sleeping if I'm sick, or working on something like cutting out season ticket baseball seasons. So, with that all in mind, let's talk about what's coming in February, and I'll take another drink before we get into that. February is going to see the pennant race in my 1985 season replay and season ticket baseball unfold. And then we're going to have the end of the winter campaign on Sunday in Arkham Horror, the card game, as we're in Tunguska for the Congress of the Keys. After the campaign ends, we're actually going to have Sunday morning baseball, as I'm going to hit the gas on my 1985 season replay. So those 3 Sundays after this coming Sunday are all going to feature baseball doubleheaders. But that's not going to be this weekend. As for the Wednesdays, we're going to continue my War Room 10-game challenge list as we step back into our background playthrough of Mag 23 Guadalcanal from Historic Wings. Then we're going to have a new game debut on the channel as we do a 4th quarter test on season ticket football. After that, we're going to go back to our German U-boat for game number 3 on the 10-game challenge as we play the Hunters. And finally, I'm going to do a replay test of APA Hockey. Now, you guys probably are going to think I'm nuts for doing a replay test using APA Hockey, but what I'm going to try is I'm going to try doing a 3rd period only test with a game situation put together, and I'm going to do a ticker test as well, which I would be using Final Score Hockey from Downey Games as my ticker for that. As for Mystical Munchies for the month of February will take us into into recipes from the world of Tolkien, as we'll be making spiced pear and cranberry muffins, strawberry and lavender shortcakes, fish and chips, and Bilbo's 11th birthday cake. With that, let's wrap this video up. So tomorrow afternoon, we're going to have a double header. First up, we'll be back to the 1985 season and season ticket baseball, as we'll be at Shea Stadium with the Cincinnati Reds playing the New York Mets. Tim Browning will be on the hill for the Reds, and Ron Darling will be up for the Mets. Before that, though, Mystical Munchies will start out of the recipes from the World of Tolkien cookbook with the appetizer, spiced pear and cranberry muffins. Sunday, we're concluding the winter campaign in Arkham Horror, the card game, with the final scenario, Scarlet Keys, Congress of the Keys. Wednesday, we're playing Mag 23 Guadalcanal from Historic Wings. Thank you for watching the video. Please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Be sure to turn on notifications so you get my content. Be well, stay safe, take care of yourselves and your loved ones, and I'll be back with more videos in the future. Until then, take care, everyone.